Hey folks, I'm restarting my live. Don't know what happened. It seems to have kicked me out of the other one. So if you all can join me, here we are starting the new one. I wonder if the Silicon Valley global elites don't particularly care for what I'm saying on here. Wow, this is very interesting. So interesting they would shut me down like that. You got to wonder what's going on here, what's happening. But here I am. I hope you all are joining me. Can everyone see me? Does everything seem to be okay? Is all well? What's on people's minds? Am I sideways or am I normally fixed? Is my standing okay? Caleb, you are sideways. Oh my goodness, what is wrong with this world? I don't know what's going on here. All right, I am going to have to just turn myself around, and you're all going to have to see me long ways. You're going to have to see me like that. Sorry about that, folks. I don't know what's going on. And you know what? Someone posted that this is because I got myself an iPhone, and they're absolutely right. I am going to get myself a Huawei phone as soon as I can, if the State Department allows it, because I don't know what's going on here. This has been a crazy, crazy live in terms of technical difficulties. But again, that's how you know that I'm real, right? Right? If I were working for some huge corporation, if I were not just a guy concerned about the future of my country and the future of the world, if I was just some phony, everything would be working out great. I'd have a 500-person crew here doing this for me. I'm going to find out a new position that this will work in. You're all going to have to be a little closer to me, but I think this will work. I just need to get it in a place where it's secure. How about that? Yeah, intelligence agency interfered. I wonder about that. You know, you can talk conspiracy theories here, but I need to get a Huawei phone. That's what I need to get. So you're all going to have to see me, sideways like this. It's not letting my phone turn around all of a sudden. It's locked my rotation. This is very, very strange. So not only is the phone locked my rotation, but lo and behold, they cut my feed randomly. I don't know what's going on. And now they're saying it's very pixelated, and I wonder what that's about. Anyway, here I am trying to do a broadcast on my iPhone, is the deep state interfering? Who knows? Who knows what's going on here? Maybe this is just the low quality of iPhones. Who knows and who cares, right? But again, I'm real. I'm just a guy, right? If I were working for some huge, gigantic international conspiracy, if I were working for billionaires, I would not be having these technical difficulties. This is how you know that I'm the real deal. I am a real guy here on social media, and I hope you all rejoin. And if you were with us before, please post the new link, because we're having a conversation here. The conversation should not end. We should keep going. We should keep going. We should keep having this conversation. I'm having a great time here on Saturday, even though we're having technical difficulties. Wow. What a day it is. What a day it is. I was talking about the whipsawing of the population, I believe. I was talking about Park Chung-hee and how he built up the economy of South Korea. And he built it up by basically getting loans from Japan that were secured by the Kennedy and Johnson administrations. And they built up POSCO. And POSCO was a state-controlled corporation, and it was technically private, but it was basically facilitated by the government. And it was through POSCO and other similar endeavors that Park Chung-hee used the government, not neoliberalism, not privatizations, but the government, to build up the economy of South Korea. The economy of South Korea was built up by state action. State action. Park Chung-hee was not an adherent of capitalist free market neoliberal ideology. He was an anti-communist, and he basically became kind of a Bonapartist on behalf of the urban sections of South Korea, and he developed, an urban middle class in South Korea. South Korea's economic growth came about as a result of government involvement in the economy. And that's one thing that these people will say about, the so-called Asian tigers. They'll talk about a lot of these countries that have been able to have a huge amount of economic prosperity in Asia. Taiwan, for example, Singapore. And they'll say, see, they're not communist like China, so therefore capitalism is the answer. Well, actually, if you look at Singapore, the level of government involvement in their economy is massive. The government is hugely, hugely involved in government activities in Singapore. I mean, the government is way, way involved. The government oversees everything, right? Taiwan, Eve from Civic Matters points out, Taiwan, that's not a neoliberal country. The government is heavily involved in managing the economy, right? I mean, all these Asian tiger countries that are used as an example of how great the free market is are all not at all free market, right? They all have huge government oversight of the economy. They're not socialist countries. The economy is still for profit, but the state is heavily involved. I remember when I was in school, they showed us a film by John Stossel, right? That was before he was with Fox. When John Stossel was with, who was he with? John Stossel was, I think at that point he was with CBS or NBC, and he was with these, and he was basically, it was this whole thing about, is the USA number one? And it was all, well, the USA is not number one, and it's because we're not free market enough. And if we just privatize things, if we just make things more free market, we can be number one again. And he goes to Hong Kong, and he shows that, look, he opened a store in Hong Kong in a matter of hours, didn't need a business license, so therefore, Hong Kong is more free market than the United States, and because Hong Kong is more free market than the United States, that proves that free markets are the answer. Lo and behold, Hong Kong is not. At that point, Hong Kong was still with the British. But it was not more free market. There was a huge level of government involvement. This is a myth, right? That adherents of neoliberalism, they point to South Korea's successes and North Korea's recent failures as if that represents the entire history of the Korean Peninsula, and then on top of that, as if that shows that we need to privatize everything and have free market, unregulated capitalism. And that's completely false on a number of levels. It's a narrative that must be deconstructed. Thank you, all of you who are still with us, even though we had these technical difficulties. I'm happy, you're happy. It's a lovely, lovely Saturday evening here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment. I am in Brooklyn. I am having a great time. I'm sitting in front of my bookshelf, having a chat with all of you. And I want to say that all of you, you are really important. You're really special because the message that we put out here on these lives is very different from what you get in, mainstream dialogue, right? I mean, this isn't your standard Bernie Krat. I don't have a big microphone in front of me. I'm not uttering a bunch of profanities. I'm not here going bleepity bleepity bleep these big corporations, bleepity bleepity bleep, we need to invade. Oh, bleepity bleepity bleep, Venezuela's not really socialist, bleepity bleepity bleep. Oh, what the blank blank blank. I mean, that's all over the internet. I see these videos. And hey, I agree with a lot of what these guys are saying, but it's just not a style I particularly care for. I'm much happier sitting in front of my bookshelf. I don't have a big microphone in front of me, and I'm not cursing every other word. I'm not dropping, the F-bomb every other word and cursing out big corporations. And I'm actually getting into depth and ideology, and I'm explaining the economics and the ideology behind what I'm talking about. And I think we offer a different product here. And this certainly isn't, I'm not sitting here talking about lizard people. I'm not talking about, the Illuminati and the thing up on the thing, and they're coming for us. So buy $1,000 apple and bite into the $1,000 apple. It's not sprayed by the government. This isn't Alex Jones stuff here. No tinfoil hats allowed. And furthermore, this isn't super polished. I'm not sitting here trying to please the rulers of the United States. I'm not scared to say that what's going on in Venezuela, why we should leave them alone, and why the problems of Venezuela aren't caused by socialism. They're caused by meddling and attacks by the United States. I'm not afraid to break the rules when it comes to foreign policy. I'm not afraid to break the social norms. I am bold enough to do it my way. I am doing it my way. This is me. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm just like this when the cameras are not rolling. I am Caleb. I'm not playing a character here. This is me. I am Caleb. There are no lizard people here. There are no F-bombs being dropped every other second. I am sitting here and I am being real with you, right? I am a real guy in my real apartment, drinking my real diet beverage, which will not be named, which thank goodness I've got it because this has been an interesting live with all these technical problems, but hey, here I am. And I'm having a great time. And you all are special. You all, I will say, all of you that watch this, there's something about you that makes you special, right? I don't want to talk about this because this is one thing that points to a lot of the problems I think the socialist movement has, right? Is that we know that if you're somebody in the United States at this time who realizes that we need the banks, factories, and industries to be operated for public good and not for profits, that we need an economy that serves public good and not profit. You realize that what we've been told about how capitalism is the only way is a lie. If you're one of those people, who can see through the deceptions, then you're not normal, right? You're not normal, okay? Normal is not good necessarily, right? And it's okay to not be normal. It totally is, right? But you're advanced. You're more advanced. You're politically advanced, and that's okay. That's good. You're smarter. You're more tuned in with reality. You understand how things are going. Average Americans aren't where you're at, and it's frustrating. I know it's deeply frustrating because you get it. And you hear your coworkers saying, oh, thank God we're not socialist like Venezuela or we'd all be eating cats and dogs. And it's like, or you hear your coworkers at work saying, oh my goodness, I hope they don't nominate Bernie Sanders. He's a crazy far lefty. Or you hear your coworkers saying, my goodness, we need to invade Syria and have a new war in Syria because Bashar Assad's an evil dictator. You hear that and you just get angry and you get frustrated. And so based on that, it's tempting to get into kind of a mindset of just hatred for your fellow Americans and for your fellow human beings. A lot of the third worldism, that's a big trend on the internet, right? It's this big thing about, gosh darn it, the people in the USA, they're just too comfortable. I want things to get worse. The workers of the United States are actually the exploiters and the white skin privilege and the Euro settlers and, oh, I hate them. And you just want to get bitter because you feel like people don't get it. And it's because you're advanced. It's not easy. People make it out. A lot of people will say, I wish I was smarter. I wish I was smarter. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't wish you were smarter. In a lot of ways, smarter people, they go through life. They don't necessarily have the best skill at making friends. It can be difficult, right? They don't see things the way other people do. And that's okay. And we're part of a community here. There's lots of us watching here. The numbers just keep going up on these videos. My YouTube numbers are going through the roof in the last couple months. It's very exciting. I don't know if it's the Bernie movement, if it's the energy, or if it's just that, that I'm talking away about things that people don't talk about. This community is growing, and you're not alone. There are quite a few people like you. Totally. You are not alone. But at the same time, it's frustrating. But you don't want to let that frustration lead to pessimism. You don't want to get caught up in the idea that there's no hope. You don't want to get caught up in this idea of hating your fellow human beings. It's interesting. Ayn Rand and the right wing and the libertarians, they have this whole thing about the great men who are the motors of the world, and the other people are just the mob. They're the mob. They're the rabble. They're the inferiors. And, the man who made fire, he was probably burned with his own invention, right? And there's this bitterness that the libertarian folks play into. It's a bitter frustration that they play into. And that's a problem, right? But I sometimes see versions of that among people that are left-wing because they're just frustrated with the low level of development of the other people. But don't fall into that, right? You got to think of it more in a different way. Instead of thinking of it as you're smarter than other people, you understand things that they don't understand, so you hate them. Think of it as you have a special obligation. You can understand things in ways that other people can't. So it's your duty to work for the betterment and to bring other people along and to help other people to get through it. You have a special obligation. You have a special skill. You're like Superman. Think about it, right? You are Superman when he's Clark Kent, right? You've got a superpower here. Your ability to understand the reality about what capitalism is and why it's destroying the world is your superpower. It is your strength. And you have the ability to use it, right? You're special. You're part of a community of people that are trying to get our country out of a rut. You're special. You've got something beautiful to offer the world. I love all of you. I really, really do. And we've gotten so much into a rut. But, one of the problems I think we have, and I'm going to be real about this, is I think that we have a problem of over-socialization in the United States, right? And it's very interesting, right? The right wing, they have this whole rant about, every kid gets a trophy. Oh my gosh, every kid gets a sticker, no matter how well they do. And there's this they want kids to suffer more, and they want young people going through the world to just, and they don't get it, but they're pointing to something real, which is that it is much easier to control people with rewards than it is with punishments, right? Anyone that ever gets punished, they can be resentful about it. They can say, oh, I didn't deserve that, I'm being victimized. But if you give somebody a sticker, right? You give a little kid a sticker, they're never going to go, I don't deserve this sticker, get away from me, you're trying to manipulate me. They're going to go, yes, I deserve a sticker, and they're going to feel special about it. And the elites of this country have very much figured out how to manipulate the aspect of us that longs for the approval of others. And it's natural. We're human beings. For most of our history, we were hunter-gatherers. We were tribal creatures. And we long for the approval of others. We want other people to like us. We want to be around other people. We want to feel accepted. And unfortunately, that makes us susceptible to manipulation. And so if you set up a situation in the kindergarten where every day that kid gets a sticker, right? That kid gets a sticker every day. And then one day, you just take the sticker away. That's far more manipulative. That controls their psyche, controls their mind far more than any punishment ever would, right? And they've basically figured out with social media, and I might sound like a hypocrite because just a minute ago I'm bragging about my YouTube numbers, and here I am going to say this, but with social media, everybody wants a lot of likes and a lot of views and a lot of shares. They want a lot of, and so they've set us all up to be constantly seeking the approval of others, right? And we're constantly getting that sticker and getting that like and getting that approval of other people, right? We're constantly getting that good job, that approval of our peers. And they've set us up to be very, very easily manipulated. They've set us up to be over-socialized to the point that we're afraid of thinking different. We're afraid of questioning things because what'll everyone else say, right? I mean, I remember when I was in college, for example. Facebook was just getting going when I was in college. But I remember when I was in college, the Iraq War was happening. It was a big issue, the Iraq War. A lot of people were mad about the Iraq War, protesting it. And when that was happening, there were a lot of people I knew in college who were very, very opposed to the Iraq War. They knew that it was wrong, that the United States invading Iraq was wrong, the USA constantly continuing to occupy Iraq was wrong. They knew it was wrong. And so I would say to them, as the young little activist that I was, hey, there's going to be a big anti-war rally. Why don't you come? And they would get this look on their face like, oh, no. Oh, I can't do that. And it's why? Why can't you do it? Well, somebody might see me at the rally, and that would be embarrassing. I can't have anyone think I'm a protester, right? And I'd be like, wait, what do you mean? And it was just, oh my God, I can't do politics. People might judge me. People might disagree with me. It was this cowardice, but it's not cowardice, right? It's that when we've been conditioned to constantly be seeking the approval of other people. When you do that to people, when they're conditioned to constantly want other people's approval, it becomes very, very, very hard for them to do anything that might put that into jeopardy. Over-socialization. It's normal to want the approval of other people, right? I mean, and on some level, if somebody's not properly socialized, it's a problem, right? I mean, someone's walking around, their shirt has a bunch of holes and rips in it. I mean, that's a problem, right? Most people want to look nice because they want other people to like them. But you get some people that are just so kind of tuned out of other people. They're just so in their own world that they can start walking around with holes and rips on their shirts, because, hey, you don't want to be too turned out of other people. But you get this problem of over-socialization, where people are so dependent on the approval of other people that it causes them to be very afraid to, when they know what the truth is, to take a stand about it, right? And that I would say that one of the problems in our modern world is that we're way, way more over-socialized than generations past. Because we have these things in our pockets all the time, these things called phones. And we're constantly looking at them going, oh, do other people like me? Oh, do other people like me? Do they approve of me? How many likes do I have? How many shares? Oh my God, I want to be popular. I want other people to like me. And they've set us up to be dependent on the approval of others in ways that we weren't always dependent on the approval of others, right? I mean, that's an aspect of the human psyche. And they've basically figured out how to manipulate it. I mean, you read about Cass Sunstein and his writing on conspiracy theories. You read all of that, you can tell that they're figuring out how to manipulate the desire in human beings to fit in, which is good. I mean, it's healthy. It's normal to want to fit in, to want other people to like you, but it can be manipulated to the point to prevent you from becoming heroic. And that's the interesting thing. You know, there's this very famous picture from Little Rock, Arkansas, of this young African-American woman going to high school, going to a white high school, a school that was segregated, that was all white. And she is there, and she's got her books, and she's walking into that high school, and there is a mob of white people all around her, this young African-American woman. And there's a mob of white people all around her yelling at her, just unloading all this hate on her. And she's just standing there calmly and walking toward the schoolhouse. Right? Think about that. If you want to know what strength is, that is strength. That's strength. The ability to have a mob of people screaming at you, but the ability to know deep in your soul what is right and go against it. That's amazing, you know, and it's fascinating because we as human beings, every civilization, every culture knows that, right? I mean, the symbol of the Christian religion. What is the symbol of Catholicism, actually? It's Jesus Christ nailed to a cross, right? Somebody who believed what they were saying, was bold enough to do what they were doing to the point that the authority figures and the rulers nailed them to a cross and left them to die for it, right? Joan of Arc. Think about Joan of Arc, the great hero of history. Joan of Arc was a nonconformist, if there ever was one, right? Joan of Arc, you know, she was a woman, but she started putting on men's clothes. And she started telling the people in France they needed to rise up and fight the British invaders. And she told them that, hey, the reason that they needed to do it is because God talked to her. God told her to do it. God was in her head telling her to lead her French people, to put on men's clothes and lead her French people to fight against the invaders. And Joan of Arc is remembered as one of the greatest heroes in all of French history. But if Joan of Arc had been over-socialized, if Joan of Arc had been, you know, hey, I want to fit in, I want other people to like me, and she wouldn't have been able to do what she did. And that we see heroes throughout history, great people, great men like Thomas Carlyle talks about, great women like Joan of Arc. We see them, you know, like that woman walking in Little Rock, Arkansas. Those are people that have the ability to go against the grain and make great sacrifices and have everyone around them disapproving of what they're doing because they have principles that they are truly loyal to. And that's what we need to figure out. We need to figure out how to overcome the over-socialization and the manipulation of these tribal desires for approval that our Silicon Valley tech giant global elites have manipulated, right? That people are so afraid now. They're afraid of offending anybody. And we need to figure that out. So yes, a lot going on in the world today. Now, someone's asking me about the Trump-Kim summit in Hanoi that flopped, right? And it was a big failure. I mean, it was just a blah, you know, it went blah. I mean, it was just a disaster, right? They didn't even have lunch. I understood. It was supposed to be a whole day. Trump and Kim were getting together, and they sat down, and you know, there's different accounts of what actually happened at the meeting, but nothing was really accomplished. In the lead up to it, we saw Donald Trump tweeting out on social media that North Korea was going to become an economic powerhouse, and Kim was excited, and everyone was excited, and, you know, it appears that the United States was demanding, you know, just immediate unilateral disarmament of North Korea, and North Korea was like, yeah, that's not negotiation, right? That is not negotiation, so that was the end of it, right? And anyone who looks at this would say, that's a failure. Trump, you failed. You're saying you're going to bring North and South Korea together. You're going to end the nuclear standoff in the Korean Peninsula. And you failed. You failed, Donald Trump. You failed. That was an epic Trump failure. That was like a football player dropping the ball. That's like a fumble in football. He failed. That's how I felt about it. That's how Tulsi Gabbard felt about it. That's how most people in the world felt about it. But you'll notice that the mainstream media of the United States said, good one, Trump. Excellent job. I have never seen any of Trump's failures be so more widely celebrated than that one. There is widespread approval of Donald Trump's failure at the recent Hanoi summit, right? Because when it gets down to it, a lot of these forces don't want peace on the Korean Peninsula. There's a lot of money to be made by selling weapons to South Korea. North Korea, as you know, as an anti-imperialist country, as a country with a state-run, planned socialist economy, as a country that's very close to China, as a country with a lot of coal to sell, and a lot that it could do on the world markets if it weren't shut out, if it were not isolated. There's a lot of countries that want peace on the Korean Peninsula, but there are a lot of very, very wealthy people that don't want it, right? I mean, if you think about it, there has been a plan in the works for a long time. There has been a plan in the works for a trans-Asian railway, the Iron Silk Road. In fact, the UN has approved it, and the idea is to have a railroad that starts in South Korea, goes up into North Korea, goes through Russia, goes through China, all the way through Russia into Western Europe, connecting through high-speed railway. North Korea, South Korea, China, Russia, all of them to Western Europe through high-speed railway. Think what that could mean, right? If you want to talk about North Korea becoming an economic powerhouse, think about what the implications of finishing the Iron Silk Road could be. Economic development, and not just, let me add, not just for North Korea, but also for the Russian Far East, right? They've been having economic forums in Russia, the far east of Russia. You look at a map, get out a map, right? There's natural gas, the Russian Far East is full of potential, right? And they've been having economic forums, and Trump, or not Trump, I'm sorry, the leaders of Russia, the leaders of China have been meeting. And if you got North Korea and South Korea and Russia and China, all of them, I mean, imagine what could happen in the Russian Far East. Imagine what could happen in Mongolia. Imagine what could happen in some of the rural areas of China. Imagine what could happen in North Korea. Imagine what could happen in South Korea even, right? It has the potential to really just open up a new center of boom on the global economy. And let's be real, that certain forces don't want that, right? There are probably certain forces that are more in that Trump category of lower levels of the rich that do want it, right? They do want it, right? Because they are going to pour some money in there. They're going to pour some investing in there. But there are some other forces, those ultra-rich forces, that don't want that at all. They want the far east of Russia. They want Central Asia. They want them all to stay poor so that everyone buys their stuff from the West and that they can maintain their monopoly. They don't want the boom that's happening in Eurasia right now. In Central Asia right now, it's like a golden era. And that's not according to me. When I was in Russia, I went to the Yalta Economic Forum. I went to the Valdy Discussion Club, which is a very powerful Russian think tank, and I heard a speech by Jack Ma, the powerful, wealthy CEO in China. I also heard a presentation by Russia's President Vladimir Putin. And when I was at the Valdy Discussion Club, Aysel Toji, who is at this point he's the chair of the Nobel Institute in Norway, right? That's the people who give out the Nobel Prize. Smart people, right? People say, oh, you're stupid for being a communist, Caleb. You're stupid for being a socialist. Anyone with half a brain. Well, Aysel Toji, the head of the Nobel Prize Institute, I heard him say that right now on the Eurasian subcontinent, in Russia and China and in Central Asia, this is a golden era, right? Trains are springing up. Electrification is being brought to entire areas. People are being raised up out of poverty. It's an exciting moment, what's happening on the Eurasian subcontinent. What they've done in Central Asia with China's One Belt, One Road initiative, with Russia's Eurasian Economic Union, the Eurasian Economic Union, with the Russian state-run mining corporations, with the Russian state-run oil and gas companies, with the China railway corporations, with the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank. They are just raising people out of poverty like crazy all across Central Asia. And they want to bring that to the Russian Far East and to North Korea. They want to make North Korea and the Russian Far East and Mongolia part of that, right? That's what they're trying to do right now. And that's what these negotiations on the Korean Peninsula are about. They can't do it if North Korea is locked out of the world economy with crazy sanctions. You can't do business with them. They can't buy oil. They can't do anything. They can't open bank accounts. If you have this big black hole over in the Far East, over in that part of the world, if North Korea continues to be in a situation where it's basically a black hole, you can't develop the Russian Far East. You can't develop Central Asia. But imagine that big block, that big, road closed sign on the new Silk Road. Imagine that was lifted, right? The economic potential there is astronomical, right? A lot of people, we're talking millions and millions and millions of people would be raised out of poverty. North Korea is this block now because of the sanctions that have been put on them for developing and proliferating nuclear weapons. North Korea is this missing puzzle piece in the potential to raise people out of poverty, to develop the global economy. It is a missing puzzle piece, and it needs to be resolved. The nuclear issue, the sanctions, the standoff, all of that needs to be resolved. We need to resolve the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. Donald Trump knows that. A lot of people that are close to Donald Trump know that, for very selfish reasons, I'm sure. They want to go there and do business. I remember there was a billionaire who was on Fox News. He was saying, I want to invest in North Korea. They want to make money. Right? I mean, for very selfish reasons, a lot of the rich people that aren't part of the club want to resolve the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. And because of that, there's hope right now. There's an opening. Meanwhile, the richest of the rich, those entrenched powers, that don't want us to get off fossil fuels, they desperately want to keep the oil markets. They believe in global warming because, we got to keep these other countries out of business because, for the environment, right? The big four super major oil companies, the big bankers on Wall Street, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Ford Foundation, they want to keep North Korea locked up, right? That's what they want to keep. They want to keep them out. Meanwhile, a lot of these lower-level capitalists in the United States are saying, hey, if North Korea opened up that whole region, there's a huge amount of money-making opportunity for me. And there's a divide about this, and I think that's one of the big divides. And you'll notice that it's almost like there's been a little bit of a trade-off. People talk about different forces within the Trump administration. You got John Bolton. And, he almost screwed up the last Korea summit, right, by announcing, Libya scenarios are on the table with North Korea. Yeah, that's real wise choice of words. We all know what happened to Gaddafi. But here's the thing, right? So John Bolton, Elliot Abrams, and Mike Pompeo are, they're the three amigos of imperialism, and they're going after Venezuela like crazy. They're turning off the power. They're putting sanctions on them. They're freezing all their assets. They're appointed Juan Guaido, this guy that no one had heard of until a couple of weeks ago. They made him the president. They are just turning up the heat on Venezuela. Meanwhile, it looks to me, this is all speculation. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it looks to me like that was the agreement. You leave North Korea alone, you let Trump do his thing in North Korea, and they can go after Venezuela. It was like a trade. That's what it's starting to look like to me. But yet, it's after we see this flop in Hanoi, it's almost like the faction that said, if you let us have Venezuela, you can do your thing. It's looking like they're not fulfilling their end of the bargain. But then again, Venezuela is not going to fall. They're just not going to fall. You can throw hell and high water at them. They ain't going to fall, right? They have a huge base among the population. I've been there. I've seen it. I walked through neighborhoods in central Caracas where every single home had been built by a non-interest-free loan, an interest-free loan paid for by the government. And people before that had lived in shacks without running water and electricity. I met people who never would have been able to speak Spanish if it weren't for Hugo Chavez. People from the jungles and the indigenous areas who were just desperately poor. Chavez, he wiped out illiteracy in Venezuela. Before Chavez came in, according to the UN, 16% of the population was illiterate. Right? More than 1 in 10 people in Venezuela could not read. And Chavez, he brought in those Cuban volunteers and he wiped out adult illiteracy. Just like Huey Long did in Louisiana. Right? Huey Long, the governor of Louisiana, he very famously, he wiped out illiteracy in Louisiana. And you might think, oh, Caleb, that doesn't matter. No, that's a big deal. Adult illiteracy. It's a horrendous thing when there are people who are adults who've never been able to read. Right? They've never been given an education. It's criminal. In this modern world with all the technology, adult illiteracy shouldn't exist. And it does exist all over the developing world. You go to Honduras. There's all kinds of people who don't speak Spanish even. They definitely can't read it. You go to Nigeria, the percentage of the population that is illiterate in Nigeria, adult illiteracy in Nigeria, is quite high. Illiteracy is a crime. It really is adult illiteracy. So when you get Huey Long, the governor of Louisiana, who comes in 1928, And he says, we are going to get rid of illiteracy here in Louisiana. I don't care how much money I have to tax the Standard Oil Corporation in order to do it. We are going to get rid of illiteracy. I am going to do it. We're going to share the wealth. That's why people loved Huey Long. You can say whatever you want about Huey Long, but he wiped out illiteracy in the state of Louisiana. And, Louisiana is not an all-white state. That was a time of Jim Crow segregation. But the African-American community was also cured of illiteracy by Huey Long, right? There's a reason that Huey Newton, the founder of the Black Panther Party, was named after a white governor, Huey Long, right? Huey Newton was named after Huey Long because Huey Long wiped out illiteracy in the state of Louisiana. Huey Long, he paved roads so that farmers could bring their goods to the market. He built infrastructure. Huey Long there's a reason that in Louisiana, all the bridges are still named after him. Even though he's been smeared in all these movies, there's the movie, All the King's Men, and he's just been run through the mud since he was assassinated. But Huey Long, still to this day, people who were not alive at the time Huey Long was there will tell you how great Huey Long was for the state of Louisiana. There would be no Louisiana State University if it wasn't for Huey Long. Huey Long is loved because he wiped out illiteracy. And in the same way, Hugo Chavez and his successor Maduro are loved in Venezuela. They wiped out illiteracy, they built infrastructure, they enabled people to start their own businesses, they secured the right to food. They did great stuff in Venezuela. And yes, there's frustration with them now. They are having some big problems, right? Since the death of Chavez, since the oil price drop of 2014, there have been difficulties. And there's a lot of people that are frustrated. But nobody in Venezuela says they want capitalism. Even this Guaido, even Juan Guaido says, I am a social democrat. I'm not believing in capital. Even he pretends to be a socialist. Nobody in Venezuela, this narrative that people have, the Venezuelans, they want American capitalism. It's this socialist, communist stuff has ruined it. No, that's not what happened. That's not the reality. I've been there, I've seen it. Even the opposition people, they like socialism, they just are frustrated with Maduro, right? This is just falsity. And that Venezuela's not going to fall, right? You can mess with their power system, but they're not going to fall, right? Those people are going to fight for what they've got, right? And Russia and China they've got their back. And they've been pouring food aid and assistance in there like crazy, pouring in economic assistance. They are not going to let Venezuela become the new Iraq or the new Libya. And it's beyond me. You want to talk about this, right? And I hate to get personal. You don't want to judge people, right? You can disagree about politics, but I swear, when Trump was in Miami, and you got a crowd of these people from Venezuela that are like, lighter skinned than I am, and they're Venezuelans, and they're there, and they're waving in the American flag, and they're cheering for Trump. I gotta say, and you don't want to judge. You don't want to judge, right? People are entitled to their opinion, and I'm sure it's personal for them. I'm sure something happened to them, and bad things are done by different political forces, and I don't want to judge them all on some kind of personal letter. I'm not saying that they're bad people, but you get all these Venezuelans who've left their homeland. They've left Venezuela, and they've moved to Miami, and they're hanging out with the Miami Cubans, and they're there with Trump. And one guy, when Trump is speaking, shouts, "Send the troops! Send the troops!" You can hear it. You heard it on CNN. You heard him shouting, "Send the troops!" What they're saying is, I want what happened to Iraq to happen to my people. That's what they're saying. They're saying, I want what's happened to Libya, which used to be the most prosperous country on the African continent, and now people are getting on boats and rafts and fleeing for their lives. There's slavery there, chattel slavery. They're saying, do that to my people. Please, kill my people. Make my people into refugees. That's what they're saying, right? They always call socialists and communists in the USA un-American. I would never, I travel around the world, never would I ever go to another country and say, kill all the Americans. I would never do that. I love my people. I love my country, right? These are sick people. These are sick human beings. They want their own people to die. They want their own people as refugees. They see the Libyans fleeing on rafts up into Europe and drowning in the Mediterranean. They see the Iraqis who've just been demolished and are fleeing everywhere and ISIS terrorism, and they think, my goodness, I want that to happen to my people. The people that I grew up around, the nation that I come from, my culture, my people, that's what I want to happen to them. That's what they want. That's what they want. Openly, send the troops. Send the troops. That level of pathology, that self-hatred is extreme, right? There's a lot of people that don't like Maduro for a lot of reasons, but when you have people that are rallying to turn their homeland into the next Iraq, that is a level of demented self-hatred that is beyond me, right? I mean, it's crazy. It really, really is, right? I mean, these are people, they basically, and I think what it's really based on is racism. I said they're lighter than I am, right? I mean, in Latin America, there's a big divide based on it's not like in the United States where it's like you're black or you're white, one drop. It's not like that. It's shadism, right? It's the lighter you are, the better you are. That's kind of the attitude. And you look at these people and they're really, really light-skinned. And the way they see it is that their country has been taken over by the rabble, by the inferior, darker people. They are entitled to be the rulers, to be the oligarchs, because they are white and they are European, and the country has been taken over by these inferior, dark-skinned rabble, and they hate it, and they are racist, right? They used to actually mock Hugo Chavez because he was dark-skinned. They used to call him monkey and put out all kinds of racist stuff against him, right? I'll never forget. I'll tell you this. I've told this story before, but it needs to be told. When I was in college, and I was in college, I went to a small liberal arts school in Ohio. There were some students from Brazil at my university. And I will never forget when I asked them what they thought of Lula da Silva, who was at that point the president of Brazil. And they said, oh, he's awful. Just an awful man. Just an awful leader. And I said, why? Why is Lula da Silva awful? And they said, oh, he's just, the only reason anyone would ever elect him is because we have this law that everybody has to vote. It's required by law that you have to vote in Brazil. And so, of course, he gets elected because all these people who aren't smart enough to vote and all these people that shouldn't be voting, that shouldn't be part of the voting process, they all get to vote. So lo and behold, he wins. And, before he was president, he was a delivery man. He delivered boxes for a living. This is so humiliating. We're a civilized country. And just contempt for Lula da Silva because he had been a delivery man, right? That was like, oh my God, you can't have a president who used to be a delivery man. And the only reason they said that he got elected, well, everybody gets to vote. Everybody in my country gets to vote. So all these people who shouldn't be voting, these inferior rabble, they get to vote. And so I said, okay. I said to them, yeah. I said, but tell me, why do they vote for him if he's so bad? Why do all these people that you don't think should have the right to vote, why do they vote for him? And the answer I got, I will never forget. It was so classic. The answer I got, I kid you not an exaggeration. Sometimes, when you're telling a story, things will get exaggerated. This is not an exaggeration. This is verbatim what they said. Quote, he gives them all jobs. He gives them all jobs. That's what they said to me. Oh, he gives them all jobs. I said, wasn't that a good thing? He gives them jobs. Yeah, but it's like bribery. He gives them jobs and decent pay, and he makes their standard of living go up, so they vote for him because they want their lives to be better. And it's like, you hear these people talk, and it's like, do they hear themselves? That's the Latin American gusanos. That's those people that were waving their flags with Trump and saying, send the troops, send the troops. Kill these inferior people that have taken over the country. We're the ruling class. We're the leaders. That's what they're saying. These are sick people. I'm sorry to get fired up here. And again, I do apologize. And I'm sure, there are other people that are part of that crowd that, something bad happened to them. I know people who look, especially when it gets to the point of a civil war, I'm open about the fact, I'll be real with you all. I had ancestors on my mother's side that were in the Union Army, that worked on the Underground Railroad, that were progressive. But I had ancestors on my father's side that were Confederates, right? And, they were wrong. What they did was awful. They should not have fought for the Confederacy. It was wrong, right? But do I think that they did that because they were just sitting around all day going, oh boy, isn't slavery great? No, they probably, again, most things in the world, and this is the thing that when you get real about politics, you realize, is that, especially when there are civil wars in countries, a lot of times people end up on whatever side their family is on, whatever side their neighborhood is on, unfortunately, if you're in a certain area, you only hear one side of the argument, and it's very sad. you know? And what my ancestors did and fought for the Confederacy was horrendous. And I denounce it, and that's why I am opposed to the Confederacy. I say that Confederate monuments are offensive to me. Because because these guys weren't wealthy slave owners. These were poor guys in Missouri. These are working class guys. And not only did they have a lower standard of living than working class people in the North, because they were competing with people who worked for free as slaves who were being worked to death, not only because of that, but also, they were then conscripted to fight and die for these slave owners that were working them to death, right? And that the abolition of slavery was good for everyone in the South, right? The standard of living for Southern people went up as a result of the abolition of slavery. And that the Confederacy was especially bad for the African Americans who were murdered and killed and worked to death, but it was also bad for the white working class of the South. The Confederacy was awful. So this neo-Confederacy stuff is horrendous. But what's missing from it is a lot of Southern people believe that somehow the Confederacy was good for white people. It was not good for white people. The Confederacy was awful for white people. It was a disaster for white people, and it was far, far, far worse, 1,000 times worse for African Americans. Neo-Confederacy is based on, it's really a response to the lack of class solidarity politics. Because nowadays, when they were having the arguments about Confederate monuments after Charlottesville, every single piece I watched, John Oliver, every time I heard a liberal talk about it, they seemed to believe that the Confederacy and slavery was good for white people. It was good for some white people, for the elite, for the plantation owners, but for the majority of white people in the South, it was awful, right? But because instead of talking about class solidarity, instead of talking about the fact that slavery was bad and that abolishing slavery involved a coalition of labor unions and African Americans that were fighting against slavery and abolitionists and Abraham Lincoln, instead of telling the story of the Second American Revolution, which is such a beautiful story of the American people coming together to get rid of this disastrous thing called slavery, right? And the African-American community really taking the lead. Harriet Tubman, the first woman to ever lead soldiers into battle, right? I mean, that's amazing. The first woman in the United States to ever lead soldiers into battle, an African-American woman named Harriet Tubman, carrying a pistol, leading slaves in South Carolina along the Combahee River, breaking into the slave plantations. I mean, heroic stuff. I mean, the Second American Revolution, the Civil War in the United States, and afterwards Reconstruction, when they were redistributing the lands of the slave owners, that was one of the most glorious moments in our history. If there's ever a moment where you should be proud of the United States of America, it is the Civil War and the abolition of slavery. And how we as a country rallied behind Abraham Lincoln and rallied behind, the First International and the Marxists and August Willich and Joseph Weydemeyer and the Free State of Jones, great movie, The Free State of Jones, and Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. And it was one of the most beautiful moments in our history when we got rid of slavery, right? When we said we as Americans are better than this and that this slave system has to go. That was beautiful. And it's really sad that we have lost the truth about what happened. W.E.B. Du Bois, great writer. Read Black Reconstruction by W.E.B. Du Bois. That's his history of the Civil War and the aftermath. And he tells that story. And it's a story that all of us Americans should read and just glow with pride about. That's when we were revolutionary. That was our 1917. That was our revolutionary moment. You want to read about that Civil War. There's a beautiful moment in our history. And then there are some people that say, well, slavery was just going to go away. No, slavery was just going to go away. Caleb, they didn't need to have a big war. No. They didn't need to have a big war. Slavery was just going to go away. That's not true. All right? And they say, well, slavery was inefficient. No. Yeah, you're right. Slavery was inefficient. But it wasn't going to go away. Why? Because those slaves that were the property of those slave owners were worth millions and millions of dollars. And there was no way for slavery to go away without a lot of very, very wealthy Southern people losing millions and millions of dollars. They were going to fight to the last man to preserve their property because the slave owners were capitalists. They believed in capitalism, and they had millions and millions of dollars worth of what was considered at that point to be human property, and they were going to fight to keep it. And the only way to take it away from them was with a government of action, right? Abraham Lincoln. Read Abraham Lincoln. Just beautiful stuff. I mean, I've posted a clip on my YouTube channel. The rights are allowed. I don't get any revenue from it. It's a clip from an old movie called Lincoln in Illinois. And it's Lincoln's actual words from the Lincoln-Douglas debates back at the time that Abraham Lincoln was running and getting involved in politics. And it's a Hollywood actor from the 40s, but he's performing Abraham Lincoln's speeches from the Lincoln-Douglas debates. It's about 4 or 5 minute clip. Beautiful stuff, right? I mean, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, he was like the Bernie Sanders of the 1850s, right? I mean, they actually had a song. Old Abe Lincoln came up from the wilderness, came up from the wilderness, came up from the wilderness. Old Abe Lincoln came up from the wilderness many long years ago, right? I mean, he was from Illinois, which at that point was an unsettled state. It was it was just being settled. It was very wild. And he was from the wild country, right? And he was a small town lawyer. And he was very tall, and he was a very, very good orator. He was not very good looking, actually. Abraham Lincoln, they say he would never have been elected president today, because if you look at his face, he did not have a very good bone structure on his face. He was not an attractive guy. But back then, most people never saw him. They didn't have photographs in newspapers back then, so no one had any idea what he looked like. But, Abraham Lincoln, the kind of the most charismatic guy who was opposed to slavery. And he was a moderate, just like, he did not want to abolish slavery, but lo and behold, he was forced by historical circumstances to abolish slavery. He was forced to carry out the Second American Revolution, one of the, probably the greatest moment in U.S. history, right? So much has been lost. And now Dinesh D'Souza wants you to believe he was a conservative. The Republican Party back in the 1850s, their slogan was free land, free labor, free men. Karl Marx was hired by the New York Tribune, the Republican Party newspaper. August Willich and Joseph Wedemeyer, who were German immigrants who were friends of Karl Marx and they were leaders of the Union Army. The idea that the Republicans were conservatives and right-wingers, I mean, that's ridiculous. It's pretty clear what side the communists were on during the American Civil War. I mean, the Republicans were radicals, right? They took their name from the Republican revolts of 1848 that swept Europe. Everything that these Republican folks are saying about the Civil War is just completely off. But regardless, right? And I probably have to go pretty soon. I've been on here for almost 2 hours now. But regardless, right? That we are in a strange moment in U.S. history. We are in a crisis, and we need to get out of pessimism. Right? This belief that the pie is only so big, the fight is just about who can get what slice of the pie, this idea there is no hope, we're all going to die from climate change, this idea that we should hate other Americans. We need a line of march for the whole country. We need to get out of the epic disaster that we're facing as a country. It's springtime. I've got renewed energy. The sun is out again. It's not as warm as I would like, but the world is moving forward. There's so many young people so full of hope and energy, and I think that there is hope, right? Because if there stops being hope, why do this, right? Why be involved in politics? We need to get beyond the pessimism, right? We all have a responsibility to make the world a better place, better than it was when we came into it. I love you all. What we're doing here is very, very special and unique. You all are very, very great and special, and I love you all. So many of you are here. I wish I could give you all a shout out. You all deserve it. You're all my friends. I have nothing but affection for all of you. You're good people. We've overcome some technical difficulties here. We've made it through. We're going to build a better world and a better future for everybody. I love you all with all my heart. The struggle continues. Time to fight back. Time to fight for working people. I just wanted to end. I did mention that I was going to mention International Women's Day once again, because yesterday was March 8th, and it was International Women's Day. And International Women's Day started because of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire here in New York City. And the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire was this fire where these women were burned alive. But that's not what International Women's Day is celebrating. It's not celebrating the tragedy of women being burned alive in factories. International Women's Day is celebrating the resistance, right? It's celebrating people like Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, people like the industrial workers of the world and the Wobblies. It's celebrating people like the suffragists who fought for women to get the right to vote. It's celebrating the fact that when that Triangle Shirtwaist Fire happened, and those women were burned alive, just like what happened in Bangladesh last week, where people were burned alive on the job because of cheap, crooked bosses. It's celebrating the fact that we had the guts. We had the courage. We had the courage and the strength to say we deserve better as Americans. We're not going to take it anymore. You can't burn women alive in factories. You can't let women die just to make your profits. We are not going to take it anymore. Leftism back then wasn't about victimhood. It wasn't like feeling like the world was just unfair. It wasn't about shaming those who had it well. It was about saying we're fighting for our dignity. We're tough. We're not going to take this anymore. We are going to stand up and fight back. The old wobbly poster the industrial workers of the world used to have. It had a worker on it, and he had his fist in the air, and he said, I will win. IWW, I will win. Right? That's what International Women's Day was about celebrating. It was celebrating the fact that there was a time when working people took history into their own hands. They stood up with strength. They became heroic. And they didn't mind if they didn't fit in. They didn't mind if people spit on them or didn't like them. They didn't care how many likes they were getting on Facebook. They didn't care if they were not getting their sticker. They stood up for truth, and they said, you're not going to burn our women alive in factories, right? It was a beautiful, beautiful moment, right? They said, we're not going to let you get away with this anymore. And I think that the reason that so many young people are piling in to watch every superhero movie, right? Whenever they make a movie about Batman or Spider-Man or, the Green Lantern or whatever, all these young people, young teenagers actually, that tends to be the target audience for these superhero movies. They all pile in to watch the superhero movies. Why? Because despite the fact that we're over-socialized, despite the fact that we don't know the truth, despite the fact that people are afraid, all of us have within us the desire to be heroic. We have the desire to be bold, be strong, to be full of courage, to challenge the status quo. They all have the desire to put their head up and do exactly what those women and those people in New York City did back in the early parts of the 20th century. In the aftermath of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, they fought back heroically, heroic strikes, heroic resistance, talking about socialism, where the workers control the means of production. They talked about creating a government of action, where society would control the factories. All of us, deep within us, have a desire to be a hero. They all have a desire to be heroic, right? All of us, no matter how much they brainwashed us with mainstream media and social media manipulation, all of us have a desire to be heroes, to be heroic. Well, I want you to be heroic. I want you to become heroic. I want you to find the Superman within yourself, the hero within you. And I want that hero within you to emerge and get us out of the disaster we are facing as a country. I want you to become heroic. I'm thinking of you. I love you with all my heart. You are my friends. You are my comrades. You are my people. And we are going to save America from the disaster facing us. Much revolutionary love, friends. That's all. Have a good evening.